The man was alone when it happened, not alone in a dramatic way, just the normal kind of alone that fills quiet rooms late at night. A small desk, a glowing screen, a half-finished cup of coffee, growing cold beside his hand. He clicked on a video. About the observer effect, something about quantum physics, something about how reality behaves differently when it is watched. He did not expect much, just another idea to pass the time. The narrator in the video spoke calmly, explaining how particles act like waves when no one is looking, and how they suddenly choose a single position the moment they are measured. The man leaned back in his chair. He had heard this before, but tonight, the words felt heavier. The room seemed unusually quiet, as if sound itself was holding its breath. He paused the video. The screen froze on a simple diagram of particles and lines. He rubbed his eyes and looked around the room. Nothing had changed. The walls were the same. The clock still ticked. And yet, something felt different. Not wrong, just alert. The story shifted away from the man and toward the idea behind the video. For centuries, humans believed the universe was like a machine, cold, predictable, and unaware. Then quantum experiments changed everything. They showed that reality does not fully exist until it is observed. That possibility comes first. Uncertainty comes later. The man pressed play again. The narrator asked a quiet question. What if reality is not passive? He smiled at the thought. It sounded poetic, not scientific, but then something strange happened. As the video continued, the man noticed his reflection in the dark parts of the screen. It looked slightly delayed, as if it hesitated before copying his movements. He leaned closer. The reflection leaned closer too, but a fraction of a second late. His smile faded. The narrator explained how observation collapses possibility into a single outcome. How, before measurement, everything exists at once. And how the act of watching forces reality to decide. The man felt a small chill run down his arms. Not fear, just awareness. The video showed a familiar experiment. Particles passing through slits, forming different patterns depending on whether they are observed. The man leaned forward again, his eyes fixed on the screen. For a brief moment, the image flickered. Just one frame, so fast he almost missed it. It was not part of the experiment, not a diagram or a chart. It looked like a pattern, a strange arrangement of light and shadow, almost like symbols, almost like intention. The man blinked. The video returned to normal. He rewound, then again, and again, and again. The frame never appeared. His heart beat a little faster now, not because he believed he had seen a message, but because he could not explain what he felt. The narrator continued speaking, unaware, or pretending to be unaware, that something had already shifted. What if the universe notices when it is being observed? The narrator asked. The man laughed quietly, trying to shake the feeling. But the room no longer felt empty. It felt attentive. The video ended the first segment with a warning. Not spoken loudly, not dramatically. If observation changes, reality, the narrator said, then watching this may already be part of the experiment. The man stared at the screen after the sound faded. The reflection stared back. And somewhere between the watching and the being watched, reality blinked. The man did not turn off the screen. He sat still, listening to the quiet hum of the room, as if the space around him was waiting for something. The video moved into its next section, the narrator's voice calm and steady, almost careful. It spoke about possibility, about how the quantum world does not choose right away. Before observation, a particle is not here or there. It is everywhere it could be. The narrator explained that reality prefers options. It stays open, flexible, undecided, until something forces it to choose. The man frowned slightly. This idea felt less like science now, and more like a mirror. The story pulled away from him, and deeper into the invisible world, a place where time does not flow in a straight line, where outcomes exist before decisions. Scientists call this superposition, many states at once, not chaos, but potential. Philosophers once spoke of something similar, a hidden layer beneath appearances, a realm of becoming rather than being. The man shifted in his chair. He remembered moments from his own life, times when many futures seemed possible at once, moments before a choice, before a word spoken, before a door opened or closed. The narrator explained that observation collapses this openness, not slowly, but instantly. One question asked, one measurement made, and reality selects a single path. The man felt a strange recognition, as if this was not new information, but something he had always known and forgotten. The video showed simple animations, waves spreading across space, then snapping into points. The narrator asked another question, not loudly, but gently. What is it that makes reality decide? The man held his breath without realizing it, his eyes locked on the screen. Science offered many answers, sensors, detectors, interactions with the environment, but none of them felt complete. The narrator admitted this uncertainty, saying that physics can describe what happens, but struggles to explain why it happens this way. The man glanced at the dark window beside his desk. His reflection hovered faintly in the glass. Watching him watch, he looked back to the screen. The video now speaking about probability, about how the universe calculates outcomes, not like a human mind, but like a field of chances, waiting to be narrowed. The narrator suggested something unsettling, that observation is not just a technical act, but a meaningful one. The man felt a subtle shift in his thoughts, as if his attention itself carried weight. The video described experiments where outcomes changed when observers gained information, even when no one physically touched the system. Just knowing was enough. The man's fingers tightened slightly around his coffee mug, now completely cold. He thought about how often he moved through life on autopilot, looking without seeing, watching without noticing. The narrator spoke slowly now, as if choosing each word carefully. If reality remains open until it is observed, then attention is not passive. The man felt the room grow quieter again. Not empty, but focused. The narrator ended the segment with a thought, not a conclusion, but an opening. Every moment holds many futures. An observation turns one of them into history. The man stared at the screen, a strange mix of wonder and unease settling in his chest, because if this was true, then every time he paid attention, he was not just witnessing reality. He was helping decide which version of it would exist. The man began to feel uneasy, not afraid, but unsettled in a quiet way. The video moved deeper now, away from particles and diagrams, and toward something harder to ignore. The narrator spoke about a long-held belief that observers stand outside reality, looking in from a safe distance, for a long time. Science agreed with this idea. The universe was the object, and humans were the viewers. But quantum physics did not allow that separation. The narrator explained that every measurement is an interaction, every observation is a touch, no matter how gentle. You cannot watch without participating. The man sat up straighter. This felt important. The story shifted again, away from equations, and toward a simple truth. The observer is always part of the system. The man thought about his eyes, his thoughts, his attention. They were not floating outside the universe. They were made of the same particles, the same fields. The narrator asked another quiet question. If you are made of the universe, how can you ever be separate from what you observe? The man swallowed. His reflection on the screen felt closer now, less like an image, more like a presence. The video described experiments where the act of measuring changed outcomes. Even when scientists tried to remain neutral, even when they removed human hands from the process, machines measured instead. Sensors recorded data. But still, someone had to look at the results, and that was enough. The man felt a slow realization settle in. Observation was not a passive event. It was a relationship. The narrator spoke about boundaries, how humans draw lines between subject and object, self and world. But at the smallest levels, those lines blur then disappear. The man remembered moments in his own life. Times when he felt deeply connected to something, music, nature, another person. Moments when the world felt less separate, less divided. The narrator suggested that separation may be a useful illusion, but not a fundamental truth. Quantum systems do not care who is watching, only that something is watching. The man's breathing slowed, his attention narrowing. The video showed a simple image, two particles linked across distance, changing together instantly. The narrator explained entanglement, how separation breaks down, how distance loses meaning. The man felt a strange echo inside himself, as if the idea was pointing back at him. If particles can remain connected, why not observers? The narrator asked a question that lingered. If you cannot observe without changing reality, then who was reality changing for? The man glanced around the room again. The walls, the desk, the quiet air, everything looked the same, but it no longer felt distant. The room felt involved. The narrator lowered their voice slightly, as if sharing a secret. You are not watching the universe, you are inside it. The man felt a subtle shift in awareness, a sense that the boundary between him and the screen had thinned. The video continued, but he barely noticed the images now, because a new thought had taken hold. If the observer is never separate, if attention always participates, then every moment of awareness is a meeting point between mind and matter, between question and answer, and the man began to wonder, not what he was observing, but what might be observing through him. The man felt the weight of the question linger, not pressing, but present. The video moved into deeper territory now, a place where science slows down and certainty becomes rare. The narrator spoke about a missing piece, something physics cannot fully explain. What causes the wave to collapse? Equations describe probabilities, measurements show results, but the moment of change remains strange. The narrator explained that some scientists believe collapse is mechanical, a result of interaction, noise, or environment. Others believe something else is involved, something less visible. The man leaned forward again, his attention sharp. The story widened beyond laboratories, reaching into philosophy, into old questions. Humans have always asked, what is consciousness? Is it produced by the brain, or does the brain receive it? The narrator did not give an answer, only possibilities. Some theories suggest consciousness is fundamental, not a byproduct, but a basic part of reality. The man felt a quiet recognition, as if the idea was knocking on a door inside him. That video mentioned ancient traditions, cultures that believe the world is mind-like, responsive, aware, not solid and dead, but alive in a subtle way. The man remembered the strange frame from earlier, the pattern that appeared only once, then vanished. He rewound the video again, slowly, carefully. The frame did not return. The narrator suggested that some information cannot be repeated, because once observed, it has already changed what needed to change. The man felt a slight chill, not fear, but wonder. The video spoke about experiments where conscious awareness seems to matter, where outcomes shift based on what is known, not just what is measured. The narrator was careful with words, avoiding certainty, avoiding claims, but the implication hovered in the air. Consciousness may not collapse the wave, but it may be involved in the question itself. The man looked at his hands, at the skin, the movement. They felt both physical and strange, as if he was both the actor and the witness. The narrator spoke softly now. What if consciousness is not inside the universe, but the universe is inside consciousness? The room felt quieter again, not empty, but listening. The man became aware of his own awareness, a strange loop of attention, watching itself. Watch. The video showed no dramatic images now, just simple light and dark, slow movement. The narrator returned to the idea of hidden variables, factors we cannot measure, but cannot ignore. Consciousness, attention, awareness. The man realized that science often avoids these words, not because they are unimportant, but because they are difficult. The narrator ended the segment with a careful thought, not a claim, but an invitation. If consciousness plays a role in reality, then every moment of awareness matters more than we think. The man leaned back slowly, his mind quiet, but wide open. Because if consciousness is part of the structure of reality, then the universe was not just reacting to observation, it was responding to awareness itself. The man noticed something had changed, not in the room, but in the way he felt inside it. The video moved forward, now speaking about choice, about free will. For years, he had heard that free will might be an illusion, that everything is determined by forces beyond control. Particles, chemistry, cause and effect. The narrator acknowledged this view, saying that physics often describes a universe that runs on rules, not intentions. But then, another idea entered the story. What if free will is not about control, but about influence? The man's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. This felt personal now. The narrator explained that if reality responds to observation, then attention matters, not as magic, not as wishful thinking, but as selection out of many possible futures. Attention helps choose which one becomes real. The man thought about his own life, moments where a small decision changed everything. A conversation, a pause, a choice to look closer instead of away. The video suggested that free will may live in these moments, not in forcing outcomes, but in guiding direction. The man felt a quiet sense of responsibility, not heavy, but real. The narrator spoke about focus, how the mind naturally highlights certain things, and ignores others. In a responsive universe, what you notice grows clearer. What you ignore fades. The man remembered days when fear seemed everywhere, and days when possibility felt close. The world had not changed, but his attention had. The narrator explained that this does not mean thoughts create reality, only that they shape which parts of reality come forward. The man nodded slightly. This felt honest, grounded. The video showed simple images again. Paths branching from a single point, some bright, some dim. The narrator spoke slowly. Free will may be the ability to choose where attention rests. The man felt something settle inside him, a calm clarity. He realized how often he moved without noticing, reacting instead of observing. The narrator suggested that awareness creates space, a pause between stimulus and response, and in that pause, choice appears. The man took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the moment. If attention shapes experience, then how he watched, how he listened, how he lived, all mattered. The video did not promise power or control over the universe. It offered something quieter, participation. The narrator ended this part with a gentle reminder, not a command, not a warning, in a universe that responds to observation. Free will begins with where you choose to look. The man stayed still after the words faded, aware of his breathing, aware of the room. And for the first time, he felt that choosing attention might be the most meaningful choice he ever made. The man did not rush to close the video. He sat in silence, letting the ideas settle, letting the room exist without needing to explain it. The final part began without drama. No music rising, no bold claims, just the narrator's calm voice returning, almost familiar now. The story slowly shifted away from the man and toward something closer. The narrator spoke about the nature of messages, how the universe does not send them like letters, clear and direct. Instead, it speaks through patterns, through timing, through moments of attention. The man thought again of the strange frame, the image that appeared only once, then vanished. He understood now why it did not return. Messages are not meant to repeat, because repetition turns meaning into noise. The narrator suggested that the video itself was part of the experiment, not as a test, but as a mirror. The man felt a subtle shift, a realization that the story was no longer just about him. It was about the one listening. The narrator explained that observation is always happening, not only in labs, not only in thought, but in every moment of awareness. Reality responds quietly, not with signs and symbols, but with experience. The man looked around the room one last time. The desk, the screen, the faint reflection in the dark glass. Everything felt ordinary, and yet nothing felt empty. The narrator spoke the final idea slowly, as if giving it space to land. The universe is not watching you. It is watching with you. The man felt that sentence echo inside him, not as a belief, but as a perspective. He realized that observation was not a spotlight pointed outward. It was a shared act, a meeting between awareness and world. The narrator reminded the listener that attention is always active, even when unnoticed. What you focus on becomes clearer. What you ignore becomes distant. Not because reality is controlled, but because it is responsive. The man became aware of his own breathing again. The rise, the fall, a simple moment, fully observed. The narrator offered no final answers, only a closing thought. If reality reacts when you observe, then the message was never hidden. It was always about how you were looking. The video faded towards silence, no sudden ending, just space. The man remained where he was, not waiting for something to happen, but noticing what already was. And somewhere between awareness and experience, between observer and observed, the quantum field did not speak. It responded.